Well, good morning, everyone, and uh, thank you so much for joining us today. This is kind of an experiment, um, although it's interesting that I think this is our first poem in a language that's not quite English, and but it's also something that when I've mentioned to some of you, you have quoted it back to me from memory. So it's probably a poem or a part of a poem that some of you know better than a lot of the poems that are just written in English. And I uh, I am actually very passionate about about the Middle English and how much better Chaucer is in the language that he actually wrote than in any of the English translations, which just seem deadly to me. I mean, I've included a literal translation, which I think is misleading in one place, but at least it tells you what the words are, just in case there are words in the Middle English that you don't recognize in modern English. Hem, for example, is them. Um, um, uh, ye is I, eye. Uh, what looks like goon is actually go. Um, so I've tried to do the translations, but let me read it to you in my best possible unauthoritative Middle English, and just so you can listen to it. And one of the things that I kind of that I think about all the time is is just what the tone of this writing is, how much of Chaucer's voice you hear in the original Middle English. So
Don't do that to me.
so here we go. One that April with his shore sota, the draught of March hath pierced to the rota, and bathed every vein in such liquor, of which vertue engendered is the flour. When Zephyrus eke, with his sweete breath, inspired hath in every halt and hath, the tendre croppes, and the younge sonne hath in the ram his half a course yrunne, and smalle fowlers maken melodie, that slapen all the nicht with open ear. So pricketh him nature in her courages, than longen folk to gon on pilgrimages, and palmers for to saken stranger strandes, to ferne halways, no coth, sorry, to ferne halways, coth in sundry landes, and specially from every sheeres ende of England, to Canterbury they wende, the holy blissful martyr for to sake, that hem hath holpen, when that they were sake.
Lloyd,
Thank you.
Lloyd, well done.
Oh,
I have a question for you, though.
yeah.
What is the source of our reconstruction of how things are pronounced?
Oh, many studies. Um, I think studies of rhymes, um, uh, studies of uh, Anglo-Saxon and German and
I think the poetics, the scansion also help people determine because we are in an iambic pentameter scheme here.
yeah,
Helps you determine the stresses.
right, right. Yeah, and in this printing, I mean, Chaucer didn't use accent marks. It's the editor who is putting in the accent marks on I think nature, yeah, nature. Um, so that's not in the original, but it's the editor that's sort of helping us
Hmm.
uh, and you're exactly right, Mike, to scan the iambic pentameter. Um, well, let's make sure we know what this is this means, and then, but I really what I love about this and and really all of Chaucer is I, I you know I mean, Shakespeare is a really great writer, but we even from the sonnets we don't really quite know what Shakespeare the human being was like. He's so embedded in all of his different characters. And maybe Chaucer wasn't like this, but there's a real character in the speaker of these words. And it's one of the it's in some ways the thing that interests me most, that there's such a person behind uh behind the language. Um, so one that it's really just when one that April with his shortest sorta. So right at the beginning, um, suddenly it's almost I don't know. How do you hear the opening line of Canterbury Tales? Oh, when? Yeah. Hi.
Well, for Chaucer, April is not the cruelest month. Breeding lilacs out of a dead land. There's a phenomenal amount of affection for the month in
Uh-huh.
that first line.
Right. Right. Um, yeah, that's a very good very good comparison. Um, almost the diametrically opposite of of the cruelest month. And I think the one that it's almost like Once Upon a Time. Uh, so it's this time when that April with his and even even the pronoun I think the I not absolutely sure I remember this correctly, but I think the possessive pronoun it's hasn't come into the language yet, hasn't been invented yet. So Mary, yeah.
Yeah, I was noticing that. I don't think I noticed it in earlier readings that there's no it or there's no it's, and
Yeah.
everything is personified just by virtue of the pronoun, and it does cast a kind of wonderful, a spell over the reader that everything is coming alive. And anyway,
Yeah.
I think that might be true. Yeah, I love it.
Yeah. Yeah, good. With it, and and so it begins with something. It's not. It's the rain isn't depressing. The rain isn't sad. The rain hasn't become a kind of image of grief and depression. It's it's sweet. It's the, the rain is lovely. April with his when it's not when April showers come your way. Well, it sort of is. They bring the flowers that come in May. When that April with his shortest sorter, the draught of March, hath pierced to the rota. It's really that rain has really penetrated, pierced even way down into the roots and and bothered every vein in such liqueur. Um, I don't know. Talk talk to me. um, oh, thank you, Bill. Uh, yeah. It comes into the language in the late 16th century. Um, it's an interesting history, and and especially about the apostrophe. Uh,
It
um,
starts to appear actually earlier, but it's not widely used. So I think there are uses tracing back to the 13th century of
really,
variations, yeah. With
huh?
yeah. So, but it's not
Thank you.
widely used.
No, thank you. Uh, but not widely used. Yeah. Um, uh, bothered, bathe, bothered every vein. Um, it's just somehow the tone is is just so consistently consistent. um,
Well, it's kind of sexy, isn't it? It's very sexy. It's you know, life and burgeoning and veins and you know, piercing things to the root. It just sounds lovely, like everything's waking up
yeah.
and it's yeah, sex is in the air.
Yes. Yeah. And how nice that is.
Yeah, it's lovely.
It's how lovely that is. And yeah, and we're right. And bathed and bathed every vein in such liqueur. And then, I mean, I don't know about the um. Oh, maybe uh, Gina, maybe you know about liqueur. Does liqueur have any of the double meaning that it well, it doesn't have a double meaning today, but does it have any of today's meaning back in the 14th century?
Don't know, but I have a proclivity to read a lot of French into Chaucer, and
Oh,
so
yeah,
it is because of time.
right.
So in the French, it would, yes.
Yeah. So I think I feel a kind of it's not just liquid, but it's a kind of magical liquid. It's a potent liquid in such liqueur, of which virtue, I think we say by virtue of which, but it really virtue really means power, by the power of which the flowers are engendered. So there is that sexuality um, that Cami mentioned. Um,
Well, going just to step back to the enchantment, I think Lloyd is addressing, and something I had read is Chaucer in his manner was very educated as a page, as a servant to nobility. And it has been noted by somebody I've read that he is the most mannerly poet in English to his reader.
Hmm. Huh.
And I that has always come across to me. It's very dear bringing out the birds that don't sleep all night long. Um, that you have to go into the thing. You hung on the word bathed, and it's going to be probably his most colorful character in the course is going to be the wife of Bath,
Oh.
uh, which is it's a textual consideration. Um, and in the age, of course, the religious element comes up with the pilgrimages, the Palmers, and of course the Holy Blissful Martyr, polarity and tension between common life, the way things are, the world, and the religious order, which at that time was, very chaste. Chastity was a very high ideal, but quietly Chaucer is always going to sort of vent how life actually transpires, and nature is a driving force, of course. It's not immodest so much as it is just very persistent in its sensuality, which I think the flooding rains, the saturating rain in the beginning of the poem is alluding to. So that's sort of my take on it. Is Chaucer's he's a very learned as far as manner with language. He learned from the French text. I believe he translated the Roman de la Rose. He fell in love with courtly French poetry and decided he would put it into English, but he could not, as it were, get the English out of his poetry. He wanted to bring poetry to his language, but he couldn't get the common manner, which is also going to crop up in Shakespeare when he's dealing with the high Renaissance forms. The commonality, the insistent on portraying low characters right next to high characters, will be a distinct mark of English poetry, I think. And that those are the things that I'm seeing in the general prologue.
Yeah. But it's very English.
Oh,
It seems
yes,
to
yes,
me,
yes.
which is really one of the things that's so enchanting about it.
It goes back also, I'll make my last note, to the Battle of Hastings when William brought the French language into this Germanic English syntax, and you get these clash of words. A drought. I don't know how you're pronouncing that, Lloyd, but
You know,
the,
well, you
the
pronounce the GH, so it's
yeah,
Drochte.
I can't even imagine pronouncing that word, but you get this very Roman word which signifies strength of men, virtue from vir, manliness, power, and and I think it is very ironic to someone very sensible in language to talk about virtue and a flower in the same sentence. It's almost, but yeah, there is a power to delicate things, and the power is hypnosis, delicacy, inebriation, enchantment. And that's the power of poetry. I think the music and the power of poetry too.
But to your point about the impact and influence of French, very French to have manliness and a flower associated in the courtly tradition.
Oh yeah, 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 yeah.
So, and the influence of French, yeah, I mean, liqueur, sap, all, um,
Uh,
the predominance, right, of
the whole thing
of
about
Norman of
yeah.
the Norman language as English is emerging in this period, because of course English is a regional language in this
Mm,
moment. So
mm.
Chaucer's really claiming that regional language to develop it, as opposed to the sort of Norman language, right, that he knew.
I
Um,
don't know.
let,
I
let,
think
let's take that issue and in the word engendered, which seems to which I think is one of the one of the most powerful words in these opening lines. And that's where is that where does that word come from?
engendré, it's a French word. That's a very French word,
Yeah.
engendered.
So French and Latin, not Old English. And so kind of it's so sort of fancier than drought, drochte.
Yeah.
And
Well,
and
the French brought forks to the table and they called pig pork and that sort of thing.
right. Well, it's just that there is both of these things are going on in this language, and Chaucer is really bringing those disparate elements of the language itself, of English itself, of where English is is getting to be.
Yeah.
If he's bringing those influences together in what seems a really effortless way, that it's not he's not sort of pumping out engendered. It's really it's it's a very natural thing for him to say. Um
Well,
and
in the
to
area where he was bred, especially as a page, there would have been the language that they would yeah, he'll stylize it and put it into poetry, meaning scansion as well as rhyme, but I think it is the language that he came by to be natural to himself that they spoke in the courts and in royal society.
yeah. Let's continue. When Zephyrus ache is also when Zephyrus ache with his sweeter breath, so he's more sweetness, and it's in the air itself. Zephyrus is the west wind. When Zephyrus ache with his sweeter breath, everything is so sweet. The rain is sweet. The wind is sweet. There's such the sweetness is so pervasive. In spirit hath in every halt and hath, and in so inspired. Uh, um, that's a really important word. And what what is inspired literally mean?
Breathed into.
Yes, breathed into, breathed in spirit. And so inspiration is really literally, the light goes on and that's your inspiration. You're breathing in this sudden happy idea. In spirit it hath, in every halt and hatha, and the halt and hatha are are very plain, are very there it is. It's just all around you in every in every grove and field. It's all there. The tender croppers, um, sweet, young, the tender croppers and the youngest Sonna. It everything is beginning. It's all there's Wendell.
Well, is there any difference between sota and sweta? What's I mean, other than the spelling?
Yeah, I don't know. I just I don't know the answer to that.
This is a subtlety of the language that has been lost
I
over
yes,
time.
I think that's you're right. That's you're they're two slightly different words that essentially mean the same thing. And and um and they're there for the rhymes, or ignoring the rhymes.
Yeah, I was going to say it's the one word there that's unrecognizable. Sotas is different from sweet.
Yeah,
And so you wouldn't naturally just be able to translate it instantly, like you can, I think, almost every other word.
uh yeah,
But
we could
we do.
probably find a few things that are hard as well. But but you're right. I mean, we and I don't I'm not a Middle English scholar, so I I I I I don't know the answer to.
Well,
I mean, if anything, it looks like soot, which is funny.
no,
Yeah,
it comes from the same word where we get soothe. It's soothe, soothing, suit, sweet in the
oh,
sense of being very soft
oh,
or
great, good.
it's yeah, I believe it's the same derivative as we have for soothe.
Oh, great, good.
Soothing showers.
Yeah. Thank you. Thank you.
Yeah.
I didn't know that.
It's been suggested to me in the past that it connotes smell and fragrance,
Huh.
uh, more, more
Uh-huh.
emphatically, aroma. Yeah,
Right. Oh, wow.
usage.
Yeah. But that all works. Um, so tender tender crops, young crops and young sun. Everything is so youthful. Everything is just beginning, and how enchanting that is. Hath in the Ram his half a course irana. So it's this is uh excuse me. Um um uh uh the- um what what's the word for this? What's the ram in his half?
It's Aries. So we're halfway through the Aries.
Right. So it's constellations, it's astronomy,
Is
Astrology.
zodiac the word you're looking for?
astrology.
Zodiac. Yeah.
Zodiac is the word you're looking for?
I'm sorry?
Is zodiac the word you're looking for?
Yeah, zodiac. Yeah, it's one of them. Yeah, thank you. Yeah. So and that's a kind of natural reference point um uh to astronomy. In astrology and astronomy are really a, a little harder to separate in 1399. Um, and I think this is just one of the great moments in English literature. And smaller fowl, so everything is very young. The tender croppers, the younger son, and smaller fowlers, mocking melodia, little birds are singing, are making music, that slapen all the nicht with open ear. What a They sleep all night with their eyes open. And I that if Chaucer knew this, maybe he knew this from personal experience or something he read, but it's just such an amazingly graphic thing for him to know and to want to tell us. Uh, and and he's amazed by this and excited about this, and he has to tell us. And that's part of this, part of the charm of this of the whole of Canterbury Tales, really of all of Chaucer, that there is this. Chaucer himself is such a character in his poems. And I mean, who knows what he was really like? He might have been he was a diplomat. He was involved in court messes. But in his poems, he becomes just the most delicious human being. This likable, wide-eyed, looking at the world, seeing all these things that the rest of us don't even notice. And there's this sense of wonder and
I like
small.
I
Yeah,
like that he is wide-eyed and the birds are too.
and the
The
birds are too.
bird.
Right. Yes. Smaller fowlers, mocking melodia, the singing birds that sleep all the night, that sleepen all the night with open ear. Isn't that amazing? I mean, that's what I hear
But
behind that line.
also, Lloyd, is the knowledge that's part of this, that he understands astronomy enough that the ram is halfway through his course,
Right.
that particular knowledge, and that the birds with the open eyes, he is completely engulfed in the nature around him with a tremendous sensitivity and awareness.
Yes. Yes. Yes.
Yeah. The birds with open eyes evokes in me the kind of emotional connection I would have with an uncle who's telling me a tale.
Uh-huh.
That this is a special place. That how would you know that little birds keep their eyes open? It's too dark to see. I mean, it's like I have knowledge from I have mythic knowledge, actually, like which my uncles telling me stories did.
Isn't that something you can just observe?
It'd be I'm thinking of what it would be given how, take a chickadee or even a house sparrow, think how black their eyes are. How would you at night know whether they were open or closed?
Well, you
The
would read
birds in
about
question,
you
the
would
birds in
read
question
about
aren't necessarily small. Swans and ducks are among the birds that will sleep with one eye open. They alternate.
They
If
do.
they're in
There-
if they're in an environment where they think they're at risk. Small birds that feel safe, I assume they sleep with both eyes closed. But
Well, these are smaller birds, smaller fowlers in
To see
the open eye could be observed in a larger bird.
yes, right.
okay.
That's all.
Right. Sorry.
to see
Lonnie, yeah.
yes, just quickly to see
birds with the open eyes at night, you too have to be a songbird or a singer with your eyes open all night.
Right, right. But you could have also read about it.
Yes. I've been told that England actually didn't typically have a dry period in March. So I don't think we're just talking about observation here. I think he's bringing in a different culture
Uh-huh.
and borrowing it from it rather freely.
Well, he's allowed to do that.
Oh yeah, I'm just saying that before we interpret this all as being a matter of observation, I think it's a matter of his continuing a tradition.
It is, after all, a work of fiction.
Yeah. Yeah.
One thing I really like about it, Lloyd, is the mix of kind of mythic stuff or stuff that will require a lot of education, and then stuff that's just everyday, regular. And I think there's just ways that different people can enter the poem, that when April with his sweet showers, everybody knows about that. You might not know about the ram being halfway through his course, although in those days maybe you did. But these little birds sleeping with open eyes, it's just an image that's so available to everyone.
Right. Right. And it doesn't even have to be true. I mean, it just the whole idea of this and how important. I mean, I think that image is just is so important because in a way there is Chaucer with his eyes open and his wide eyes looking at the whole, all of life passing him, and all of the Canterbury tales are really, they're written by someone with his eyes open, with his even all night, and it doesn't have to be factually true, but
Right,
it's metaphorically true.
right. Lloyd,
Yes. Oh, I'm sorry.
the the whole opening is so nature bound and so inviting and calming and loving and sweet, and it doesn't give a premonition of how the poem, this prologue itself, will get into very serious matters of humanity.
Sure.
Not nature, but humanity, with sickness, with pilgrimages, seeking spiritual guidance, and all the rest.
And
That progression is so dramatic in it. It reminds me a little bit of Rosanna's poem that we were reading, which began with references to nature and trees and all the rest of that, and ending in another realm. And
right. Well, and and I mean, there are characters in the Canterbury tales and who are quite sinister.
oh, that goes much later, though. Of course, I'm just talking strictly about the prologue itself.
Yeah.
You have a candidate here for comments, didn't you want to make?
I'm sorry. Mary? Yeah. Mary?
Yes, yes. Sorry, I had my mic off as always. Yeah, I was just thinking about that switch from nature to people, and yet to me it seems that there's this awakening or rebirth, that happens with the rain, and it seems to me that the people are responding the way that the flowers are, and it seems that they're not as distinctly separate the way that Chaucer set this up as we might think they are, at least to
Well,
my reading. It seems like that April wakes up the people and they have this longing, right? And that
Well, yeah, I pick up, following from that, a creche scene here. I don't know if anybody else sees that, but it's a kind of nativity where, Jesus is cradled in nature in that original scene inside the barn with the straw and the animals beside him. And it leads up to the final couplet about
Well,
the
even
Christ figure that they're going to see. So is that possible that this is like the birth of Jesus, the birth of spring are depicted here?
Oh, and Stephen, I think, was going to add to that.
yeah, Stephen.
I also wondered if it was the setup was an intentional, slightly mythic cover to say this is, this beautiful, romantic, nature-oriented tale, knowing he's actually going to go deeper into human nature and quote quote violate some of the the proper order of the day. He's going to tell the truth. He's going to pull back the curtain and show us some things that polite society is pretending not to see. So he's framing it in something that would maybe have the elders of the church not get too upset right away. So, oh, I see. This is a mythic story like older ones we've read before, giving him license later on to say, "I'm going to take you places you didn't expect."
I wouldn't argue with that. John, you
The line that we haven't quite got to, the then longen folk to go on pilgrimage
yes,
is a real turning point in that,
yes,
and I think intensely ironic that a pilgrimage was a solemn religious obligation, and he's clearly implying that it's a spring frolic for a lot of people.
absolutely, absolutely, and that is the next moment. That all of this stuff, all of this nature stuff, so carefully observed or at least presented, is leading to all of this is happening in nature, and in the same way, so pricketh hem nature in her courages. So, in the same way, people long to go on pilgrimages. In the same way that the rain coming down and the flowers are just aching to shoot up from the earth. Everything is coming alive. And in that very same way, people have that same reaction, Chaucer notices. So,
Yeah.
him,
Yeah.
yeah.
I was going to say, I love those lines. They really render the holy earthy, right? And
Yeah.
anticipate so much of what we see in the later tales, and a sort of
Sure.
questioning of the holy, right? And there's a kind of rootedness in bodiness. I guess I take those lines about birds, mock and melody that slapen all the nicht with open as, my literalism is that they're having sex.
Oh.
Which birds do with open eyes. And they singing, yeah? But that they're also, they do that actually with open eyes. So
I buy that. Yeah,
there's a deep earthiness here in all its
absolutely. Yeah.
associations.
Then, and I love the word longen. Then, folk, the people, it's just part of nature that they're just aching to get out into the world. And there's a good excuse for that. You can go on a pilgrimage. You might not want to go out traveling by yourself. That might be a little dangerous. But you could go to Canterbury and you'd serve a religious purpose, but you can get out of the house and out into the world. Then longen folk people long to go on pilgrimages, and and pilgrims seek it, looking for, searching for strange strandas. I think that's such a wonderful phrase. And stranga, strange, has the original meaning of that seems to be, you know, distant, far off, rather than peculiar. You know, it's not our word strange, but strange in the sense of something unknown, something far away. To Saken, strange stranda, and then all this alliteration, and we hardly even notice that because we're so I think we're so taken with the tone of this, and it doesn't seem to be a kind of contrived poetics. It seems to be just so naturally flowing. But you look at it, and then, well, he's using all sorts of poetic devices in this just very understated way. Then long and fall to
Isn't
Yep, please. Bill?
sorry, is it
Yep.
isn't the alliteration in the half line? We had it previously with Holt and Heath, and now Stranger
Yes.
Stranders. Isn't that a nod in the direction of the Anglo-Saxon tradition, whose eclipse he is, in a sense, contributing to?
Yeah, I think that's absolutely correct.
Mm-hmm. Mm-hmm. Mm-hmm.
Yeah. And but here,
Mm-hmm.
I think that's absolutely right. And that it's part of the versification. But
Mm-hmm.
yet here, there seems to be something a little playful about that.
Mm-hmm.
That it's not with the heavy intensity of Beowulf
Mm-hmm.
or Sir Gawain and the Green Knight. It's part of the the sort of texture of it's another part of this new language
Mm-hmm.
that is
And
going.
this tale of joy, right?
Yes.
Right. It's not
Right.
this dead seriousness. It's a tale of
Right.
joy and anticipation that
Yeah.
drives and undergirds every
Yeah.
all of the action, if you
Yeah.
will, here.
Yeah. Absolutely. To Ferna hallways, couth in sundry landes. So they're strange, they're foreign, they're distant shores, strange strandas, far off shrines, but they're known. We also know about them, couth in sundry landes. And specially, and I just some the specially just seems utterly uh, charming uh, to me, and it's Chaucer. There's a kind of calculated naivete about this. Well, people all over the world go on pilgrimages, but especially in England, from every far corner of England, and I know about this. I, Chaucer, know about this, and especially from every sheer's ende of England. Even here in England, they wend their way to Canterbury. They're not going to Canterbury, but to Canterbury they wend. They're 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 making their way. And it's not a direct line. They're just um wending their way. The holy, blissful martyr for Fortaseka. What do you hear in that line?
Um,
What's the tone of that line?
Ina, go ahead. Or Ginny?
oh,
Oh, yeah.
well, it's not as reverent as you might expect to speak about this martyr who was murdered in the cathedral. There's a little distance from the seriousness of the situation. I had noticed in the whole passage, this didn't feel like a reverent. It's all part of, there's a lack of real reverence for um, the the pilgrimage that's going to happen.
Right. It's it's earthier. It's not, I mean, the holy blissful martyr. Well, that's pretty it that's reverent in a way, and yet I think it's also it's almost overstated.
Doesn't
That
it seem like kind of a received phrase? Like we call Thomas a Becket the Holy Blissful Martyr. It's like the Blessed Virgin Mary. It's not necessarily deeply meant as much as it is a memorized phrase that pops out when you think about.
Or is it political? Um,
ah
Geoffrey is living during the reign of Richard II, which was vexed. Richard was challenged by the aristocrats. He was eventually deposed just at the end of Chaucer's life, and replaced by Henry Bolingbroke. And in the case of Becket, Henry, of course, has Becket murdered um, because Becket was making claims against the power of the king. The same is happening in the reign of Richard II. So it feels like he's maybe glossing over um, a rather nasty bit of business going on in his own time.
yeah, thanks. Mary, you're
Yeah, I wanted to
follow up on that. It's worth noting that Chaucer also lost many friends and allies in that political struggle.
I just wanted to add, actually picking up on something that Gina, I loved it, Gina, when you brought holy and earthy together in one. I wrote it down because I just think that's that it kind of, it's a mirror of that linguistic bringing together of the high and, the high and the low and the French and the English and everything. But what I wanted to say about the holy blissful martyr was that I love the way in the very next line, Chaucer brings that holy figure down to earth, and you picture almost like a mother or a wife or a nursemaid or you know that him that holpen when they were Seka or however you do it. You picture something very domestic and humble and maybe wiping someone's brow or bringing them soup or something. Anyway, I'm going on and on, but I find that same holy, earthy
Well,
kind of thing happening there.
that's what I was saying before about that creche scene. To me, I see a nativity here. I understand it's mocking and satirical with the people being pricked to sexuality by this new life. But I think embedded in it, especially maybe with the little birds with open eyes, is almost like a children's book quality of
yes.
nativity scene with you say somebody bringing milk, just the warmth and the hearth-like. There's a delicate dearness like a creche scene that's holy and lit. Us humans in this natural world being born into this world, little eggs. That's what I feel here. In addition to the satire.
No, but I think this I agree with you. I think this isn't really I mean, this isn't strictly satirical yet. And that impulse, the impulse to go on pilgrimages, I mean, Chaucer is aware that it's not just a religious matter. And it's one of the things that's so sweet about this, that it's part of nature to at the end of the winter to want to get out into the world. And one of the ways to do that, maybe the safest way to do that, maybe the easiest way to do that, is to let's go on a pilgrimage, because that's what you could do. And and um and and I want to go back to what Cami was saying before about the phrase "the holy blissful martyr," and I think I I don't disagree with that, but I also feel, and Cami, I wonder if you if you would agree with me that that automatic phrase. And I think it's true, the holy blissful martyr, yeah, the blessed virgin, but that there's something childlike about that repetition. That
Absolutely. Yeah.
and that and that it's not the sophisticated courtier who is just paying some kind of automatic homage to the saint, but that it's part of this innocent, part of this wide-eyed, oh, they're going to seek the holy blissful martyr, a holy blissful martyr. And you're not so concerned with the martyrdom of Thomas a Becket, but that there's something kind of magical about him, something kind of wonderful about this, not the tragedy of martyrdom, but the saint who helps you when you're sick. And how I as Mary was saying, how, yeah, how domestic, how down to earth, how dear that is, that it's not just some great religious experience, it's that this blissful martyr. And I love that Chaucer used the word blissful in there. That this great martyr, this powerful religious figure, actually has helped you when you were sick. If you've recovered from your cold, or from your from your flu, or from the plague, um, you can give thanks to the very figure who has helped you. And how sweet that is, how lovely it is to be able to pay tribute to someone who really helped you, who really got you through some difficult time. And 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 then even the and the word seek and sick become, they're almost the same word in Middle English.
Is,
And
is there just a slight note of the intellect, the intellectual skepticism of faith healing here?
how do you mean? I'm not sure I.
Well, it's the him that helping one that they were sick, that that they're going on this pilgrimage because they've been healed because of their faith in the martyr. And
Well,
and
but yes, but I think more so because the martyr has actually helped them. That it's not exactly their faith in him, but that there's been some practical result from 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 they from their belief, that maybe we're not saying anything very different, but
well, rather than I just got over a cold because you get over colds.
Thank you. I'm glad to hear that.
Ellen and Jim, you wanted to add
Oh,
something to that?
please.
Yeah, I just wanted to just come back in a more general sense that all the references to birth and eyes opening and everything. I mean, it is a general prologue, and it's this wonderful it's about the beginning of the poem as well as about the beginning of life and the time of year and all of that. And it's just a terrific entry into this much longer and broad experience. But I think we shouldn't forget that this is in a sense the general prologue, and it's a beautiful entry into this whole thing.
Thank you so much for saying that. And I think that's really true. Yeah. It's just, this, I don't know how many of you know Mahler's First Symphony, but that it begins with, nature waking up, and you could hear the birds and the cowbells and in the orchestra, and that suddenly, everything is just waking up, is coming alive. And you're going to get to some really serious things later, but that just the joy of this awakening. Yeah, Jim.
No, it's
Ellen.
this time. I think one of the charms is one of the things that's awakening is our perception of the language. I mean, we're used to looking at words that carry echoes of the time they were written in and also what they mean to us today, and they get tired and shop-worn, and we have immediate reactions to them. And these words, and with their unfamiliar spellings and pronunciations, allow us to look at each word in a fresh way.
Yeah. It's just, I mean, it just seems so amazing to me. You can read this translation at the at on the page that I sent you, and it tells you all, what it tells you what Chaucer is saying, but it's inert. And that Chaucer and the rhymes. What do you make of the rhymes? Um, I think that the rhyming couplets themselves, the rhymes themselves, give a kind of dimension to this to the poem.
They're very unforced, aren't they? And there's very little
Yes.
strain. I suppose the first line, with its trailing epithet, could be seen as deforming or distorting natural word order for the sake of jockeying the rhyme word into position. But elsewhere, he manages to uphold a smooth, natural syntax, even as he supplies the rhymes in a timely fashion. And it's quite neat the way he heads towards a rime riche to clinch the long periodic sentence with which he begins.
Right. Yeah, yeah.
And I think the rhymes too go so beautifully with each other. Not only the unforcedness, but sota and rota, the sweetness and the root in the root, the liquor and the floor, the breath and the haith. They're just son, iron. They go together so beautifully. Melodia, open ear, courages and pilgrimages, and srondas and londas, and enda and wenda. And then the seka and seka, the sort of same sound to me anyway, virtually. They're, when they get sick, they go to seek, or, so the pairs seem so perfect and almost like a summary of the whole prologue, the whole opening of the prologue. It seems like a summary of the passage we just read.
Yeah.
I think the couplets also give a sense, just kind of in the background there, that all is right, right? I mean, that this is the plan. This is the way things are supposed to be. Um, I love that. I love that aspect of it too. It's just so
Yeah.
beautiful.
Yeah. I mean, it's just it is. I mean, we're very lucky that this is a language. It's not exactly the. It's certainly not the language we're used to, and it's not exactly. It's not exactly. The, I mean, it's harder than Shakespeare. I mean, Shakespeare is really writing in English, and this isn't quite English yet, but it's close enough, it seems to me, that I mean, I know I will never be able to get the full effect of Old English. That's just a foreign language. And I can read translations, of course, but Middle English, and especially Chaucer, is close enough that with some effort I can read it and really hear Chaucer, hear the writer in 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 this language, and have a have a sense of, if not the biographical Chaucer, at least of the figure that he is presenting to the world as he is telling this story. And I think it's just so touching, and there is a kind of sweetness, even when he's really being satirical. There's also just a kind of sweetness that's always there, that I just believe is part of the a part of his character. Say something.
Can I just ask something,
Yes.
um, not particularly about this passage? I just wondered which bits of the Canterbury Tales elsewhere, which tales or prologues to tales you happen to like.
I love the Pardoner's prologue and the Pardoner's tale, uh,
Right.
as well. I mean, of course, the wife of Bath is just, just one of the great characters. But I would say, for me, I love the Nun's Priest Tale, which is a kind of animal fable. There's so many really wonderful things, but the Pardoner's Tale really, because it's so satirical, and
Mm.
the sort of tension between Chaucer really seeing this very kind of nasty character, and not prettying it up in any way, but that he's still Chaucer, and
Yes.
he's still this wide-eyed, even this creepy guy is part of our pilgrimage. Um, so I mean, in some ways that's my personal.
Your your mentioning the nuns priests made me think that at the start of that tale, there's a reference to the conventional idea of the creation of the world as having occurred in March, and
Oh, right.
this could be seen as the regeneration of nature, which we've been referring to, can
Yeah.
be seen literally as a recreation if we think about March here as anticipating the reference to March as the month of God's creation of the world in the Nun's Priest.
Yeah. No, I like that. I like that connection. Anyone gonna go home and or gonna pull out their Chaucer and Yehudi?
Yes.
Yeah. Good. Oh, you're Susan. You're on mute. Unmute.
Okay. Are we there?
Okay. There you are.
I simply said it's the most musical. poem I know.
Mm.
One that sings from beginning to end with and the rhymes help as punctuations and cadences, or resting points or punctuation points. But altogether, the thing is so mellifluous and it has such variety in tone.
Yeah. Yes, absolutely. And that variety really expands the more, I mean, it it seems to me it's just endlessly um just compelling and fascinating because it's never monotonous.
And it's the sort of thing that one could hear someone read it and not understand a word and still feel that it was a profound experience.
Oh, good. Yeah.
Yeah, because it's like pure music.
And I heard Yehudi read it or quote it, remembering it from 82 years ago
When I was
when
15
he
or
was
so.
15 or 14 in school and
Yeah.
taught at the professional children's school, and to hear him read it is just magical.
Yeah. Yeah. It's
I
funny.
was
I mean, I used to know a lot of poems by heart, but I was really surprised that it's the opening of the Canterbury Tales that I can remember better than poems that I know better than I know this. It's still in my head.
I was wondering
Oh,
if we
sorry.
had time for someone to read it again sometime before we close.
Okay.
Yeah. And I wanted to add that a lot of what we're noting now is, yes, wondrous and magical experience
Yeah.
that is being revealed and revealed to the poet and revealed by the poet, but it is a crafted work of human hand that we're
Absolutely.
seeing.
Gina?
And we're beginning to touch on the enormous innovation, right?
Yeah.
Why the musicality speaks to our ears. Early moments, sort of the not quite nascent iambic pentameter, but all of these sorts of elements that Chaucer really, right, innovated, right?
Who would like to read the beginning?
can we hear Yehudi reading it? I
Yeah.
would
Sure.
love that.
Yes.
Yehudi?
Well,
You up for
I'll
this?
try, but I have so many pronunciations that are,
Well, that's all
grievous.
right.
Yeah, don't worry about that.
All right. One that one that Aprila with his shores sota, the drought of March hath pursed to the rota, and bathed every vine in sweet liqueur, of which vertu engendered is the fleur. When Zephyrus eke with his sweet breath inspired hath in every holt and heath the tender crops, and the young sun hath in the ram his half course he run, and smalle fooles maken melodie that slept in the night with open ear. So pricketh their natuur and their courages, than longen folk to go on pilgrimages, and palmeris forsaken strandes, to ferne houses in, I now don't understand this line, in zondere Londres, and specially from every shire of Engeland to Canterbury they wend, the holy, blissful martyr for to seek that him hath helpen when that they were sick.
Oh, that's beautiful.
Thank you. Thank you.
Thank you.
Uh, well, um, thank you for indulging in excuse me, and in this experiment, uh, 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 and as always, I've learned from what you have had to say, and we'll be Marita. Thank you. And when is our next?
Our next program will be on Saturday, February 15th, and it'll be back to the regular time at 11 o'clock.
At 11 o'clock.
Yeah.
I guess to read more Chaucer.
Oh.
Yehudi, you're silenced, Yehudi. Did you want to add something?
I do, yes. Am I on now?
You are.
I just wanted to say that that I am very interested in setting poetry, and I find very little that I can set. And part of the reason, one of the things that occurs to me is that how impossible it would be to set this poem to music, because it is utterly complete in itself, complete in every dimension of thought and music and feeling. And I feel the same about most of Shakespeare. I think it's impossible to come up with a good song or even a cantata or a passage for Shakespearean texts, because they are so redolent and so just loaded with intrinsic meaning and music and thought. So that one needs, in order to set a good poem, a good song, you need a banal, simple, direct, concrete poem with simple diction, simple thoughts, and then the music can add something. But otherwise, it's just a hopeless task.
Well, yeah.
Composers set very intellectual and highly interesting texts, and they're a bust. They're just useless. They don't work.
That's
You have a few exceptions. I mean, you may point to something like A Mirror in Which to Dwell by Elizabeth Bishop, but even that, it's not wonderful songwriting. It's a wonderful composition for other reasons. It's interesting, but only in the part where there's a very simple sentiment with very direct and colorful words like "Oh Breath" does it really work as a touching poem and as a touching composition. Yeah, well, that's
Yehudi, that is so interesting. I'm going to ask my composer sister how she feels about that, because she, Augusta also sets a lot of text, and I wonder if she has that same feeling. That's a really, really interesting point.
She and I talk so often. Maybe yes. Well, I'll be interested to hear what she has to say. But her approach to and desire and her intention of writing music to texts is very different from mine, as is her music, which is radically different from mine.
Yes, absolutely.
It happens that I love it, but I don't love it because it's similar. I love it because it's different and so scintillating.
That's great.
Yeah. I spoke to her yesterday at length.
Oh, wow.
Yeah.
We'll have to catch up with her about it. That's great.
Yeah. Well, it's hard to catch.
Yes.
I think one of the great settings of English poems is by Benjamin Britten. And I would say, yeah, maybe he has a setting of Donne's sonnets, and those are really very complicated poems, and they're very. It seems it's possible, but his best settings are poems that are not so complicated in their language.
Oh, yes, and think of how few words are used in the Serenade, which is
Exactly.
devastating in its expression.
Yeah, yeah. yeah, if you're interested in this whole issue, maybe that's the first place to start. Benjamin Britten's Serenade for tenor and horn. They're just really wonderful settings of English poems.
And then one should go to Purcell.
Ah, but it's not great poetry.
The point I was making.
I agree. Oh, listen, we should let Marita get get back to work.
All of you, this was really so interesting today. So
good.
So focused. And my goodness, such brilliant people. Oh.
Yeah,
some of them with red hats on.
You are wonderful, and I am so grateful to all of you for participating, and for your interest. And Marita, just thank you for letting us keep this. Yes.
My pleasure. My pleasure.
And I guess it's not too late to wish you all a happy New Year. And hope to see you all in February.
Thank you, Lloyd. Thank you, everyone, for such an interesting conversation. It was really great.
Thanks so much.
Take care.
Take care, everyone.
Lloyd.